If you're running a B2B company and your pipeline is full of leads that never close, this video is for you. After working 15 years with founder-led B2B companies, I can tell you, most of them don't have a lead problem. They have a lead quality problem. They're spending money, they're spending time, they're chasing prospects they're never gonna buy. So I'm gonna show you how to fix that with fewer leads, better fits, and deals that actually close. Your first instinct when pipeline is thin is I need more leads, right? More top of the funnel, more volume, and I get it, it makes sense. If you're closing 10% of your leads, you just get more leads, right? Double the volume, double the revenue. It's simple, except that's just not how it works in complex B2B sales. I worked with a managed service company that IT services, about 4 million in revenue. They hired an agency to run paid campaigns, and that agency delivered. They got them 80 leads in 90 days. The founder was so pumped. He finally had some pipeline, but then reality hit. Out of those 80 leads, 60 of them were companies that were just too small for the actual service. 12 of them were a break fix. They were looking for break fix, not actual managed services. 5 of them were just competitors that were researching. And out of those, 3 were actual fits. And they closed one of them, or 80 leads in just one deal. And the founder, he spent 3 months personally qualifying every single one because he didn't trust his team to do it. That's just not pipeline. That's a time trap. And here's where it starts to get put into perspective. Only 5% of B2B leads are actually ready to buy. 5. Now, the other 95% are either the wrong fit, wrong timing. They're just browsing. They don't know that they have a problem yet. So when you're chasing the volume, that numbers game I hear all the time from founders, you're building a system that's just 95% waste. Now, the reason most B2B companies attract these bad fit leads is their messaging just talks to everyone. And when you talk to everyone, you close no one. I ask every founder I work with, what's your ideal client? And I would say more, 9 times out of 10, I get the same answer. It's we can work with anyone between 10 and 100 million, but that's not really an ideal client. That's like a census. And your ideal buyer isn't a revenue range in an industry code. It's not like that sick code that a lot of old school founders remember. It's a situation, really. If you think about your best 3 to 5 clients, the one who pays you on time, who doesn't micromanage, he refers you to others, and they renew without a fight. What did they have in common when they found you? Usually it could be something like they'd outgrown their current system. They tried to fix it internally, but it failed. They knew they needed outside help, but they just didn't know who to trust. And they were under some kind of deadline, maybe a board mandate or a compliance requirement, and a system that was just about to break. That's your ideal buyer. You got to know about the signals and other pieces inside internally. It's not always just firmographic. It's a psychographic profile. Person, the account in a specific situation with a specific problem. A company starts to know this, everything can start changing. Your messaging gets sharper, your content attracts the right people, and the wrong ones self-select out before they ever fill out a form. We know that buyers today in B2B want to do 90% of their journey themselves. Give them what they need and they'll find you. But the bad fit leads don't just waste your marketing dollars, they poison the entire sales operation. So here's what actually happens. A lead comes in, it looks decent on paper, your sales, your SDR or an AE, or maybe just you, the founder, spends an hour on a discovery call, then they get the follow-up, then you got to send the proposal, then 2 weeks of back and forth, then what? You get silence. They go MIA. And then you follow up week after week, and doing anything you can because you really invested a lot of time in this deal. And then you get that polite email, we decided to go in a different direction. Could be 3 months gone. Multiply that by 5 bad fit leads every quarter, or bad deals. That's weeks and months of just selling time burned on deals that were just never going to close anyway. That's not just the time. That's your forecasting screwed up. You might have a pipeline that looks good on paper. You're telling your team, your partner, you're talking to yourself. If you're like me, we've got 500K in pipeline, but half of it's just bad fits that are going to stall or ghost. Your forecast is just is just fiction. And then there's that morale hit of your team, your sales. Sales stops trusting the leads. Maybe they get a little cynical and they get a little animosity brewing with the marketing agency or their marketing team. Maybe they stop following up a lead so quickly because they assume the next lead is just garbage and they need to go source their own because the inbound or whatever marketing send them is just trash. And then that one good lead does come in and they get that same slow response. They get a bad taste in their mouth and then you're going to lose it. B2B companies waste an average of 28% of their selling time researching and chasing prospects who are just never going to buy. That's more than 1 day a week, really, every week on nothing. Every week you're just wasting a day. So think about that right now. How much time does your team spend on leads that go nowhere? If this sounds familiar, it usually comes down to just one thing. Your messaging isn't specific enough to filter out the wrong buyers before they get to your sales team. That's why we offer a free revenue messaging audit. You fill out a short form. I'll personally review the messaging and send you back a breakdown of what's working, what's not, and how to fix it. No pitch, there's no obligation, just feedback that you can use this week. Put the link in the description. So how do you actually define your buyer? You got to get specific, and I'm talking uncomfortably specific. You could just start with the deal data you have. Jump into your CRM, pull out your last 50, 20 deals, then sort them by margin, retention, and how painful they were to deliver. Now, that pattern is going to jump out to you. One of our clients did this exercise. It was a 3PL logistics company, and they thought their IACP was any manufacturer that needs warehousing and fulfillment. Sound familiar, right? But when we looked at the data, we jumped in their CRM. Their best customers are always these renewable energy companies. There's solar manufacturers, battery storage companies, that whole world there. Heavy, high value equipment that just needs that specialized handling and white glove delivery. Every single one of them was kind of all in that same use case there. Same situation. They had the same urgency and the same budget range. So, once they could see that, they've rebuilt, we worked together to rebuild everything around that buyer, their website, case studies, their outbound, their content, everything just focused on those companies. Now you know exactly who you are. You can find them. You can spend time building relationships there. And that's probably the part that most founders resist, especially in the smaller, but you have to say no. When a lead comes in that doesn't match, you gotta pass. You refer them out. You say, we're not the right fit for you. That feels insane when you're hungry for revenue, and we've all been there. But every bad fit you take is a good fit deal that you don't have time to close. The companies that grow fastest aren't the ones that say yes to everything. And once you know your buyer, your positioning has to match. Most B2B websites say something like, we help companies grow with innovative solutions. And that just means nothing. Everyone's saying that, that kind of just the same jumbled words. And it could be anyone, it could attract anyone, and anyone is the problem, really. Compare that to specialized logistics for renewable energy manufacturers shipping high value equipment. Now you got your buyer thinking, that's exactly my problem. That's exactly who I am. And then they want to read more. That client we had, a supply chain consulting firm, their positioning was end-to-end supply optimization for mid-market companies. And after a few rounds, we were able to change that to supply chain consulting for food distributors managing cold chain compliance. Same company, same service, but different words. And that talks to different companies and shows that you really get them. What happened to the consultants is their lead volume dropped 40%, but their close rate tripled. So at the end of the day, revenue went up. And they spent less time chasing leads then they could really personalize their pitch, their offers. Because every lead that came in, they knew what they were getting. The tire kickers stopped showing up and the sales conversations started, flow at a completely different level. And that's just what tight positioning does. It's not a marketing exercise. It's a sales filter. If you're looking for a book to read by the way, April Dunford has a great book about positioning called Obviously Awesome. Really easy read, gives you a lot of information about positioning, and it's going to really help you set you apart there. So pick that up if you're looking for a book on positioning. Now, just let's finish up with this last piece, consistency. I say it almost every week here, and this is where almost all founder-led companies, they just fall apart. They post on LinkedIn for 2 weeks, nothing happens, so you stop. This isn't where my audience is. You try one webinar and you get 5 people, and then you just stop because there are people, my audience they don't want to go on webinars. Or you hire a content writer and you just get generic content, and then so you just stop. The problem isn't the channel. The problem here is you're quitting before the compound effect kicks in. And it's just, when you step back and think about it, your sales cycle is probably 6-12 months. Your buyer isn't going to see one LinkedIn post and call you. And that's not why anyone's on LinkedIn, to just find the service you're offering. They're going to see you 15, 20, 30 times. Maybe they see your ad for 6 months and your case studies. It could be they see you in podcasts. They saw your YouTube video. That's how trust gets built in these complex sales. So just pick 2 channels. Go deep on those channels. And if your buyers are on LinkedIn and they watch YouTube to learn, just commit to those 2 channels. Post 3 times a week on LinkedIn. Comment on the buyers you follow on LinkedIn. This is the most overlooked, just simple thing you can do is follow your buyers in Sales Navigator. Find when they're posting, find and just add value to the post. Bring social back to social media. Think about one long form piece of content you can publish every week, and then you can repurpose that into all your other content. So now you're commenting, then when your buyers come to your profile, you have good content for them to comment on as well. Just the reciprocal. The goal isn't more leads. That's not where you need to be. The goal is fewer, better conversations with people who already know who you are, what you do, and why you're different. By the time that they reach out, the sale is halfway done. They know that they need you. So every video now, I'm trying to do a Monday morning action plan. I want to give you some real actionable steps you can take after watching this video. Number 1, just pull the last 15 closed deals, sort by margin and retention, and just start finding the pattern. That's your real ICP here. Start looking at the notes, looking at the transcripts. Use Claude or an LLM to start analyzing this to see where the patterns are. And then once you have that, rewrite your homepage headline to speak directly to your buyer situation. Not your service, the outcomes that they want. Could cut off the problem solution type copy, but think through what's the outcome and the transformation that they're seeking, and how do you provide that? That gives you a really unique perspective in that hero section. Then just pick 2 channels and block 30 minutes a day for the next 30 minutes. Just post, comment, show up. Just see what happens here. If you like to do more text and writing, LinkedIn and blogging are probably your thing. If you like audio, you can use podcasts, and you can turn your podcast into posts on LinkedIn. So think about what you really like to do, the content medium you like to produce content in, and then go do that. Don't forget to comment. Find your buyers and engage with them. And that's how to stop chasing leads and start closing them. Define the buyer, tighten the message, show up consistently. If you want me to look at your messaging and tell you exactly where to fix, grab the free revenue messaging audit. The link's in the description, and I'm going to personally review and send you back an actionable feedback. And if you want to learn why founder-led companies build trust faster than big agencies, watch this video right here.